for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Da-mi in Seoul. For the first time in a decade, Seoul will hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council for 1 month in June. South Korea is expected to push for discussions on cybersecurity, especially against growing threats coming from North Korea. Leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China are holding their first summit in 4.5 years in the coming week here in Seoul. The president's office is hopeful of restoring trilateral cooperation. The South Korean government's push for the expansion of the medical school admissions quota will be finalized later today. The safety minister says the first such hike in nearly 30 years will revive the collapsing local medical system. South Korea is taking on the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month for the first time in 10 years. Now, Seoul is set to push for public discussions on cybersecurity, a topic that hasn't been covered by the official UNSC agenda previously. Lee Seung-jae has more.
For the first time in a decade, South Korea is set to hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month. South Korea, which is a non-permanent UNSC member, will chair the council for 1 month as the council's 15 member states rotate on a monthly basis. During a press meeting, Seoul's top envoy to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, said undertaking the presidency is an important role in coordinating the UNSC agenda, adding that South Korea will be ready to convene a UNSC meeting in the event of a provocation by North Korea. Hwang emphasized that the role of the chairing country is important as it affects the direction of discussions on key global issues and international opinion. During its month-long presidency, South Korea will seek to hold high-level public discussions on the topic of cybersecurity. Seoul has been heavily focused on such issues due to evolving threats by Pyongyang in the security domain. For this, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol plans to preside over the session. South Korea's top envoy to the UN stressed that malicious cyber activities on key infrastructure and theft of civilian data and cryptocurrency are threats that all countries face. Hwang added that despite the importance of cybersecurity, the topic has not been dealt with as an official UNSC agenda. Seoul also plans to hold public discussions under the theme Child and Armed Conflicts at the request of the UN Secretariat. The ambassador expressed his hope that South Korea's presidency will contribute to the nation's push to expand its diplomatic horizons and emerge as a global pivotal state. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China will gather for the first time in more than 4 years on Monday here in Seoul. A meeting that Seoul's top office believes will serve as a turning point to bring their relations back to normal. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea, Japan, and China will hold their first trilateral summit in over 4 years, with the aim of fully restoring and normalizing their three-way cooperation on trade, climate response, and interpersonal exchanges. Kim Tae-ho, South Korea's principal deputy national security advisor on Thursday, said President Yoon will hold three-way talks on Monday with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Qiang. The three are expected to focus on 6 main areas of cooperation, including people-to-people exchanges, climate change and sustainable development, health and aging demographics, as well as science and technology and disaster and safety response. According to a presidential official, their talks will be concluded with a joint statement, with Yoon, Kishida and Qiang possibly holding a joint press conference.
The Trilateral Summit will serve as a turning point to completely restore and normalize the three-way cooperation system. It will also serve as an opportunity to secure momentum for future-orientated and practical cooperation that will benefit the people of the three countries.
The three-way talks, stalled since December 2019, come amid strained relations over a number of bilateral disputes, on top of tensions in the Indo-Pacific region as the United States and China engage in geopolitical competition. After South Korea and Japan took major steps to patch up their differences last year and restored bilateral trade and security ties, Seoul has been pushing to revive their three-way talks with Beijing. While Yoon, Kishida and Qiang will also discuss regional issues and ways to respond to complex global crises, a presidential official told reporters they are unlikely to focus on contentious issues. These include North Korea's weapons cooperation with Russia and the possibility of Seoul and Tokyo joining the Security Pact by Australia, the United Kingdom and the US. Before the highly anticipated talks, the South Korean leader will hold separate summits with his counterparts on Sunday afternoon before a welcoming banquet. Yoon and Chang will discuss strengthening strategic communication after months-long tension between the two countries, along with trade, investment and cultural ties. With Kishida, Yoon will address Korean Peninsula affairs, as well as regional and global issues, as well as their trilateral cooperation with the United States. Observers believe bilateral tensions over messenger app Line may also be raised. Under the mantra of South Korea, Japan, China plus X, Yoon's office says the three countries will aim to expand their scope of cooperation beyond Northeast Asia to the wider Indo-Pacific as well as the global level. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And following the trilateral meeting, President Yoon will also be hosting UAE's president and dozens of leaders from Africa for a broader cooperation with Korea. Now, Korea-Africa Summit will be Yoon's biggest multilateral summit. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
It's set to be the biggest welcoming ceremony hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol. Next Tuesday, the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, will arrive in Seoul for a two-day state visit, the first by a UAE president. According to the top office on Thursday, it'll include a Black Eagle air show, more than 600 military personnel, and 160 children.
When President Yoon Suk-yeol and his spouse made a state visit to the UAE in January last year, they were given a grand welcome at an official presidential welcoming ceremony with a large cavalry and camel troops lined up. Similarly, on May 28, when the UAE president enters Korean airspace, we will also mobilize the highest level of courtesy and conduct various official welcoming ceremonies.
There will be various diplomatic events on top of an official summit at the Yongsan presidential office on Wednesday. The two countries have long enjoyed good cooperation, with the UAE being South Korea's only special strategic partnership country in the Middle East. In fact, during President Yoon's state visit to Abu Dhabi last year's January, the UAE pledged a $30 billion investment into South Korea.
The leaders of both countries plan to discuss concrete measures to elevate their cooperation to a higher level in the four key areas established during President Yoon's state visit to the UAE in January last year: traditional energy and clean energy, peaceful nuclear energy, economy and investment, and defense technology.
This state visit is highly anticipated. It was supposed to happen last October, but due to Hamas' surprise attack on Israel causing uncertainties in the Middle East, the UAE postponed. In the meantime, the upcoming Korea-Africa Summit, which will follow the UAE Summit, will be the biggest multilateral summit hosted by President Yoon. It's set to happen on June 4th and 5th. There will be 45 or more African nations coming to South Korea for the first summit of its kind.
This will serve as an opportunity to strengthen political, economic and social solidarity with African countries and to build favorable and practical cooperation in various economic security fields, particularly in key minerals, infrastructure, renewable energy, digital agriculture, health and tourism.
Under the national vision of becoming a global pivotal state, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration has emphasized strategic cooperation with the Global South, including Africa, since its early days. The top office says, adding to the Korea-Pacific Islands Summit last year, the Korea-Africa Summit will further expand the nation's strategic cooperation with the Global South. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The first medical school admission seats hike in nearly 3 decades will finally be realized here in South Korea later this afternoon. The country's safety ministry believes the hike will be a great help to revive the local medical system. Our Choi Min-jung tells us more.
The government's plan to raise the medical school admission quota is set to be officially confirmed on Friday afternoon at a meeting held by the Korean Council for University Education. During the meeting, the council will deliberate over and confirm changes to the 2025 college admissions plan submitted by each university. Accordingly, this will mark the first medical quota increase in 27 years.
The four main pillars of medical reform aim to expand the number of medical school admissions for the first time in 27 years, to increase the significantly insufficient number of doctors, and revive the collapsing local medical system.
The final results of the meeting will be announced on May 30th, and universities will announce updated admissions guidelines by the 31st. The government's stance is that there will no longer be room for negotiation for change in the future if the plan is confirmed. However, some national universities have been rebelling against the government's plan by refusing to reflect the quota hike in their school regulation amendments. The Education Ministry explained that this will not have any impact. The Medical Professors Association for Korea also plans to hold a press conference in front of the Supreme Court on Friday to oppose the plan and submit a petition. There have been strong protests from people within the medical community against expanding medical school admissions since the plan was announced on February 20th. More than 90% of resident doctors have left their workplaces, and almost 3,000 residents are no longer eligible for next year's certification exam. Medical school professors have also submitted resignations or leave of absence requests. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
Higher prices in the country have resulted in the sharpest fall in inflation-adjusted household income in the first quarter since 2017. Our Park Kwon-woo has this report.
South Korea's household income saw an increase in the first quarter of the year, but taking inflation into effect, inflation-adjusted income, or buying power, fell in the largest range in 7 years due to higher prices. According to Statistics Korea on Thursday, the monthly average income per household in Q1 was around 5.12 million won, or over $3,750, an increase of 1.4% year-on-year. But when considering inflation of 3% during that period, income dropped by 1.6% from the year before. This was the sharpest fall among all first quarters since 2017, when it dropped by 2.5%. Income earned through wages, the biggest part of household income, dropped 1.1% year-on-year. When adjusted for inflation, that figure fell by nearly 4% from the previous year, which was the highest drop ever since related data was first compiled in 2006.
The rise in consumer prices and slashed incentives given by major companies were the main factors behind this fall.
Data also showed that the monthly average amount of spending per household in the first quarter was nearly 2.91 million won, or over $2,100, up 3% year-on-year. They showed that people spend more on food and non-alcoholic beverages, along with on accommodation and entertainment. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea's chip industry is growing, aided by the artificial intelligence boom since the development of OpenAI's ChatGPT. On Friday, the Bank of Korea released an analysis of recent trends in the global semiconductor market that began to rebound from the start of last year and said that South Korea's chip exports are expected to continue to grow until the first half of next year. The central bank predicted that demand is likely to expand from AI servers to more general servers, such as those in mobile services and computers, as they need to be updated with new AI functions. But with chip firms struggling to expand their capacity to produce advanced products, the BOK stated that further investment in domestic semiconductor production could benefit the South Korean economy. The trade dispute between the U.S. and China rumbles on, with Beijing being hit with a new wave of sanctions and Washington facing a possible retaliation. Eyes are on how this could affect the global market, including South Korean firms. Our trade correspondent Moon Hae-ryun tells us more.
New steep tariffs announced by the Biden administration last week were met with mixed responses from the South Korean market, with some sectors such as the chip industry expecting to not be as affected as others. Trade tariffs on EVs from China are being quadrupled from 25% to 100%, and chips face a doubling of the duties already in place to 50%.
Because we're not going to let China flood our market, making it impossible for American auto manufacturers to compete fairly. We're also implementing a 25% tariff on electric vehicle batteries from China and a 25% tariff on critical minerals that make those batteries.
Regulations for Chinese-made connected vehicles are also expected to be announced this fall, regulating vehicles such as smart cars with autonomous driving and vehicles with wireless navigation software, over concerns of Beijing collecting personal data through connected vehicles. With higher tariffs on Chinese-produced vehicles, domestic electric vehicle companies could take advantage of this gap in the American market. South Korea's exports in the first quarter of the year have already reflected this trend, with data from the Bank of Korea showing that the value of outbound shipments to the U.S. overtook those to China for the first time in 21 years. But one expert says that this is only temporary, as Washington seeks domestic production of goods.
Until the construction of those factories are complete, Korean firms may be able to export more to the United States, but once those factories come online, Korean companies may lose their advantage in the American market.
Another factor that needs to be taken into account is the possibility of Chinese companies diverting exports to markets in Europe or other Asian countries. This could lead to South Korean firms facing much tougher competition in these markets, especially for the steel industry. For companies such as POSCO and Hyundai Steel that will have to compete with the much cheaper Chinese steel. In response, the South Korean government submitted a statement at the end of last month to the U.S. Department of Commerce, expressing its concerns regarding the uncertainty around how the country's firms could be affected. The Trade Ministry also set up meetings with the automobile, battery and steel industries last week, pledging its support for diversifying supply chains and raising the country's competitiveness in the global market. 문혜련, Arirang News.
In a surprise turn, ETFs in the second largest cryptocurrency, Ethereum, have been approved for listing on stock exchanges. Now, once trading begins, billion-dollar funds are expected to flow into the market. Our An Sung-jin brings the latest.
The creation of Ethereum spot ETFs has now become possible. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Thursday approved the listing of Ethereum exchange-traded funds, which was filed by several asset management companies, including BlackRock and Van Eck. NASDAQ, the Chicago Board Options Exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange can now list ETFs tied to the price of Ethereum. Though individual ETF issuers will have to get their S1 filings approved before the products can launch, this signals that Ethereum ETFs can be traded on the stock market. The SEC's decision comes less than 6 months after it approved Bitcoin ETFs. Given that the SEC rejected spot Bitcoin ETFs for more than a decade over market manipulation concerns, it comes as a surprise for some in the cryptocurrency industry who had expected the commission to reject the filings. Reuters noted that this move is expected to pave the way for other products to begin trading later this year. Ethereum is one of the world's largest cryptocurrencies. The price of Ethereum hiked after the announcement, surpassing $3,800. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Hundreds of Harvard University graduates walked out of the school's commencement ceremony on Thursday over a decision to bar students involved in pro-Palestine protests from graduating. Earlier this week, Harvard faculty said that 13 students who had their degrees withheld due to disciplinary violations would be restored to the official list of eligible graduates. But on Wednesday, one of the school's 2 governing boards overturned the decision, once again barring the students from receiving their degrees. The governing body said the students could appeal and that their degrees would be conferred if they return to good standing. The students claim they are being punished for exercising their right to freedom of speech. Other universities, including Duke University and Virginia Commonwealth University, have also seen graduation ceremony walkouts related to pro-Palestine campus protests.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. A stage collapsed at a political campaign event in North Mexico state of Nuevo Leon on Wednesday evening, killing 9 people and injuring 50. The state's governor, Samuel Garcia, said on social media that 8 adults and 1 child have died, while many more needed surgery or treatment at local clinics. The collapse happened in the city of San Pedro Garza Garcia, at an event attended by Jorge Alvarez Maynez, the presidential candidate for the centrist Citizens Movement Party. He said in an interview that the accident was unexpected, saying a gale came, a sudden wind, and unfortunately, it collapsed the stage, resulting in a fatal accident. Video footage shows the stage structure suddenly falling forward toward the crowd. Mexico's Interior Minister said that the armed forces were at the scene to provide support, while Governor Garcia warned residents to keep safe from strong thunderstorms in the area. Now to the U.S., where a political consultant has been fined $6 million for being behind automated calls that used artificial intelligence to impersonate American President Joe Biden's voice. 54-year-old Steve Kramer, a veteran political consultant who mainly worked for the Democrats, was indicted in New Hampshire by the Federal Communications Commission on Thursday for scam calls he set up to defraud voters in violation of a federal caller ID law. New Hampshire's Attorney General charged Kramer with 13 misdemeanor counts of impersonation of a candidate and 13 felony counts of voter suppression. The robocall reportedly went out to thousands of New Hampshire voters in January, just before the state's first presidential primary, and told voters to stay home and save their votes for the November election. To the UK now, where a Member of Parliament received praise from the Prime Minister and a standing ovation from colleagues after he returned to office after losing his hands and feet to sepsis. 57-year-old MP Craig McKinley returned to Parliament on Wednesday, 5 months after his arms and legs were amputated. He had spent 16 days in an induced coma after he began to feel unwell last September. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak praised McKinley, calling him an inspiration, while Speaker Lindsay Hoyle made an exception to allow clapping in Parliament. McKinley said he wanted to be known as the first bionic MP, as he was welcomed back to the House of Commons with prosthetic limbs. The European Space Agency on Thursday released new images taken by the Euclid Space Telescope. Astronomers mapped dozens of rogue planets floating in space using the Euclid Space Telescope to study a distant region of the Milky Way. Images include the star-forming region Messier 78 in the Orion constellation, shrouded in interstellar dust, as well as Abell 2390, a giant conglomeration of more than 50,000 Milky Way-like galaxies. Coming less than a year since the Euclid Space Telescope was launched, the ESA called the 5 images unprecedented and a treasure trove. The ESA launched a $1 billion observatory project last year with a 6-year mission to create a 3-dimensional map of the cosmos. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you could have either a rainy day or summer sunny conditions, or neither. Starting with the rain, the East Coast will see spotty showers and passing rain along with thunderstorms. But Jeollado provinces as well as parts of Gyeongsang-do are having more summer weather under sunny skies today. And afternoon highs are hovering above 30 degrees Celsius there with very strong UV rays. But the East Coast will see highs in the upper teens with that rainfall. Meanwhile, the capital area will be cloudy and breezy, taking a nice break from the sunshine and the heat today. Seoul gets up to 25 degrees, Gwangju topping out at 30, but those in Gyeongju should notice a high of 23, which is about 10 degrees lower than yesterday. Now, tomorrow looks to be a cloudy one as well. Then there's rain in the forecast on Sunday afternoon from the capital, spreading to the rest of the country through early Monday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.